some interesting moments yesterday with President Trump on the campaign trail amidst the start of the Democratic National Convention, espousing a message that I don't think is all that true, but they seem to be committed to it nonetheless. Let's take a listen.
Is just a Trojan horse for socialism. He is. He's a Trojan horse. He has no clue, but the people around him are tough, and they're smart, but we disagree with them very, very strongly. They're mean, and they're angry, like her.
Yeah, Krystal, I mean, I don't know why they are so committed to this, and it's like they just absolutely won't stop with the socialism stuff. And it's like, I keep telling people, I mean, not around them, it's not like they listen to me. I'm like, I actually know some socialists, and I was like, they hate Joe Biden. And I was like, the real message should be, like, Biden is, and that was the only Republican I've seen it do it so far was Josh Hawley in that one tweet, but it's not like anybody's listening to him either. It's like, Biden is a Trojan horse for globalization, free trade, for many of the things that Trump ran on in 2016. That's what he's a Trojan horse for. Hillary 2.0. The craziest part about this is it's the same candidate who successfully prosecuted that case in 2016 has zero idea about why he was elected in the first place, and is now embracing this RNC stuff just completely hook, line, and sinker. Paul Ryan could have delivered that speech in 2012.
Yes.
Reagan could have delivered that speech in 1980.
Right.
And, maybe then it was popular, but it's not now. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And because it's like didn't you point out that poll that America views Biden and Kamala as more moderate than Trump and Pence? They don't believe this stuff. And the way to prosecute the case is to say moderation in America is actually radical. It's a radical idea of coming together and deficit hawkery and endless war and, and bad trade deals and globalization and appeasement of China. Haven't heard a single one from him.
He's almost taken like the flip side of the worst part of resistance liberals' case against him. Like, he also yesterday was out saying that they're going to usher in far left fascism. So the very same attack that didn't work on you whatsoever, they've turned around and now are like, oh, Joe Biden is going to be a far left fascist.
That's a good point.
Nobody is going to believe that about Joe Biden. It's just not what they think about him. Do they think that they're not sure he's really up to the task of leadership? Yes. Do they have questions about his level of competence in, executing a plan and keeping the country safe? Yes, they have questions about that. Do they have questions about his long record and how that will translate into his years in office? Yes, they have questions about that. Do they think that he's bringing in AOC and Bernie Sanders to run his administration? No, of course they don't.
And AOC and Bernie Sanders will tell you that, right? It's like, go ask them. They'll be like, are you super powerful in this process right now? They're like, yeah. It's like, well, I only got to speak for 60 seconds.
That was cool.
Like, what are you talking about? It's like he believes now almost like a Fox caricature of what Joe Biden is, which is just so fundamentally wrong and discordant from reality to the point where but what really shocks me about this is that they're committed, because whenever Brad Parscale was in charge, I was like, oh, maybe, whenever they fired him, I said, maybe we'll see a change in the message. No, we haven't seen a change in the message
that's a weird
whatsoever.
Thing. And I wonder if you've heard it, because remember, they pulled all the ads down. They fired Brad. They're like, we're reassessing.
Right.
And we both thought, okay, maybe they're actually
maybe they'll turn things around.
I haven't seen any difference in the strategy.
More boats. More boat parades.
Right. Still on the boats.
To boat parades. More boat caucuses. More Biden is a Trojan horse for so. They are all in on this message. Any of the issues which got them elected in 2016, haven't heard once about Biden on NAFTA or PN. Bernie prosecuted a better campaign against Joe Biden than the Trump campaign is doing right now in those, relative few weeks when he had his wits about him.
Yeah.
And was talking about same thing on the Iraq war. Haven't heard it once from the Trump campaign. Haven't heard anything about immigration. All these are the three central issues which got Trump elected in 2016. Not one time in one of his campaign speeches have I heard that be the central takeaway for his voters. It all seems to be this Trojan horse. And then the other thing is mean and nasty. I mean, I think that worked with Hillary because it was obviously a perception, but it was a perception that translated towards public policy of she doesn't care about people like you.
Yeah.
That's ultimately kind of what it comes down to. On Kamala Harris, it's much more, it'd be how the Bush campaign went after John Kerry in 2004. It's like, this person doesn't believe anything. And to the extent she does is dangerous neoliberalism and globalism. But again, they refused to prosecute that case.
Yeah, they could have really run a very similar playbook to what they ran against Hillary Clinton.
Which they should.
And it's hard to understand. I mean, I look at both of these candidates, and we've been sort of panning the DNC from last night, rightfully so. Yeah, plenty of that.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to lose sight of the fact that the Republicans' convention is very likely to be at least as bad, if not worse. And look, here's the reality. Last time around, Trump got to kind of pick what issues he ran on. Because Democrats ceded the field to him and let him have whatever conversation he wanted to have with the media, he really got to pick and choose which issues he could elevate and what ground to fight on. It's a different deal this time. You don't get to pick and choose. People are really concerned about the pandemic. They really want their kids to be able to go back to school. They really want their lives to go back to normal. They really want to not have to watch weird, like, Zoom, conventions next time around. They like it to be normal again, right? And so
sorry for all of you.
So you can't, it's not going to work by picking and choosing these normal, like, Republican culture war battles. And yet you were pointing this out. That looks like exactly what they're planning to do at the RNC. Let's throw up the tweet of a couple of the speakers that they plan. They're going to get the St. Louis couple who waved guns at Black Lives Matter protesters. They're going to get the Covington Catholic, Nick Sandmann, who, settled a defamation suit with the Washington Post. That's the direction that they're going in, is these, like, tokens of the culture war. And in a normal time, okay,
that would work.
At the base, it might work. But not now. People are worried about their lives and their livelihoods, and this is completely beside the point.
That's the issue I have, which is, look, I think both of those people who were involved have all been treated terribly by the media and by so many people, by the justice system and others. But that doesn't mean that running on that's like your core competency, right? Like, this should be baked in. You should be like, yes, there's this left-wing campaign against our culture here in America. That is ever present, has been since 1980. You have to be able, if you actually want to win some new votes, or at least hang on to the votes that you won in 2016, you have to present a forward-looking economic message, because this cultural ground will not be all you can stand on. And realistically, it's all they're really leaning into. And let's say even that the cultural ground is what you want to prosecute your case on. There is a reason that Trump is not running on it. And that's because of what's been happening at the Supreme Court with Gorsuch and with Kavanaugh and some of the decisions that we've seen out of there. He doesn't have core credibility on many of these issues. And in the same way, like, Mike Pence is not out there offering the same reassurance that he was able to in 2016 when they were talking about the Supreme Court. So many of his most, like, potent political messages, I think the media never really understood how important Pence and that list of Supreme Court justices was to Trump's election in 2016. This time around, that doesn't really exist. They also never understood the immigration message. Trump seems to have dropped the immigration message. They also never understood the trade message. Well, when is the last time we heard about it, other than a weird line about China and the trade deal, and then talking about how he banned travel from China on January 31st, which, like, great, right? I mean, something that's fine, but beyond all of this, it is not enough to win 50+1 votes in America, or even, let's say, a majority in the Electoral College. And it's just the more I watch this, he could be headed for a Romney-style defeat. When he's got somebody like Biden to run against, who's so easy.
And that's why I'm like, yes, and yet I can definitely see Democrats easily screwing this up, right? I mean, he could still win very much, especially if you watch what's on display at the convention this week, because it's not like they have any forward-looking vision. It's the same old Trump is bad stuff that they've been trying and failing with all along. I will say at least they've, like, now that we have the pandemic for them to talk about, and, like, a real issue that Trump has actually failed on, at least they've dropped Russiagate. So that's 1 point in their favor.
Oh, they've got more.
But Trump seems to have bought into the media's caricature of his own voters. When he tweets out about, like, the suburban lifestyle dream and suburban housewives and all this stuff, and fear-mongering about plans to diversify neighborhoods and bring in more low-income housing. It's like he really does believe that the only reason that people voted for him was because they're, like, racist deplorables. He's actually bought into it. He's playing into it. And so he thinks by just throwing out these sort of, like, culture war, right-wing culture war totems, that's going to gin them up, and that's all people need. And look, there's a certain group that is going to be with him no matter what, for whom those things are exciting. But for most Americans, you ask them what they're interested in this election, It's not going to be Nick Sandmann. It's not going to be the,
That's
people
right.
who
I
wave the
agree.
guns at the protesters. It's quite the opposite of that. It's like their actual being able to be healthy, being able to be safe, being able to make their rent, being able to make their mortgages, and just not be terrified anymore.
That's right.
So if you're missing that, then, and I will say on that matter, Democrats did a decent job last night. I think the Democrats' case against Trump is actually pretty good. It's just they don't have an affirmative case for Joe. It's just like, and Joe's not as bad. Joe will be a little better.
That's the thing. You want to win suburban votes, make it easy for their kids to go to school, you'll win 100% of the vote. I mean, that's really all it takes. And that's the way that they're trying to do it is say, oh, well, just ignore all this stuff about the pandemic, the thing which is central to the issue of your entire life and how you conduct it and, your business and all of that. And
let's talk about the scary people who are going to move into your neighborhood. It's like, that's not what people are worried about.
No, they're not worried about that right now. Although I think there's, some ground whenever it comes to what they're actually talking about that on the housing regulation, but it doesn't matter, which is that is not what people actually want to talk about right now. So again, I'm not even disagreeing with so many of the things that they're discussing. It's that the center thing that's supposed to be in front of your face, they're just ignoring whatsoever.
You have to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
All right, more Rising for you after this.